All right, welcome back to the channel. So there's not a lot of fights that are cannot miss type of matchups in boxing. And in this video, we're going to talk about one that is most definitely a cannot miss matchup in boxing, and one that Shawn Porter's team is saying that they are actively trying to pursue, and that is between Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter. There's some hangups about the fight, but it looks like Team Porter is trying to push it and being much more vocal about it. Let's talk about what they have to say and the potential for this fight to pop off and why it is an absolutely cannot miss fight in the sport of boxing. Let's do that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel, subscribers. So Shawn Porter's father, trainer, manager, Kenny Porter, was on, I do believe that he was on Instagram live feed, which was then put up on Fight Hype, or it might have been put up on a different channel. There's several videographer channels that are taking live streams that are on Instagram and the such and placing them on their YouTube channel so that more people have an opportunity to see it. People that aren't necessarily following Shawn Porter or paying attention to everything that's coming through the timeline. So during this time, this Corona time, it has been a very, very pleasant thing to see that they've been working to get that information out to people. So one of the things that came out was Shawn Porter's father, Kenny Porter, was talking about the matchups that they want to make, and he mentioned Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford was one of the more prominent mentions when he was going through the fighters that he was trying to get with. And we know that there's been a big push by a lot of people, myself included, to get Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter in the ring together, which seems like it is a difficult thing to make happen. But the advancement in this is that this is just the importance of what Kenny Porter said. And Shawn Porter was there in the room at the time, because you can hear him talk in the background. If it wasn't enough to know that his father can speak for him or his manager can speak for him, the fact that he's in the room definitely adds credence to what Kenny Porter is saying. So Kenny Porter is saying that he wants to fight Terence Crawford, and they think that Terence Crawford is the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, the best fighter in the world, and they hope that they're able to, match up their skills with Shawn's skills to Terence Crawford's skills and make that fight happen. My take on it is that is a fight that should happen. If everything was right in the sport of boxing, that is a fight that would definitely happen. And I don't really care whether or not would happen either before or after a fight with Errol Spence Jr. Now, I do believe that the Shawn Porter Terence Crawford fight is important to happen before the Errol Spence Jr. fight, because the Errol Spence Terence Crawford fight is, it's a ways off. We don't know when that fight is going to be made. And this fight between Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter is literally a cannot miss fight. There is almost no chance of that fight not being a top level fight, where the fight is going back and forth, sometimes, with ebbs and flows. Sometimes Terence Crawford is going to look like he's dominating the fight. Other times he's going to look like he's having real difficulty with Shawn Porter, because Shawn Porter is the type of guy that is just impossible to look good against. If you look at all of the fights for Shawn Porter to date, none of those fights have been blowouts. All of those fights have been tightly contested. Shawn Porter reasonably could feel, walking out of all of the fights that he's lost, that he actually won that fight. That goes for the Kell Brook fight. That goes for the Errol Spence Jr. fight. That goes for the Keith Thurman fight. All of those fights were close enough, and he gave enough work to each of those guys that he feel like he could respect what, his performance in those fights. And also, fight fans should respect what he brings to that fight. Now, there's a lot of people that'll say, yeah, I know Terence Crawford is much better. Terence Crawford will beat Shawn Porter without a problem. And, so let's not worry about this fight. let's just make the fight between he and Errol Spence. My response to that is, if you could make the Errol Spence Jr. Terence Crawford fight right away, that would be great. Matter of fact, you could have all three of the belt holders fight in a mini tournament. You could have Errol Spence Jr. fight Terence Crawford right off the bat, have Manny Pacquiao fight, I don't know, Keith Thurman, and then have the winner fight. I mean, not Keith Thurman because he just beat him, but whoever, Danny Garcia or Shawn Porter or Mikey Garcia, and have the guys match up. And that way we would get an undisputed champion, and that would be great. So we would know who the champion is. But the reason that I want to see, one of the reasons that I want to see Shawn Porter and Terence Crawford doesn't have anything to do with the belts. It has a lot to do with just seeing those two guys in the ring with one another and see how those guys match up with one another. I believe one of the problems that we have in boxing is that not having a championship belt it prevents certain fights from being made, because people put so much emphasis on the championship. And which is why, in order for promoters and managers and fighters to make money, they feel like they've got to create more and more and more championships, right? The WBC WBC and the WBA are the great examples of it, because they have, franchise, they have the diamond belt, the silver, the diamond champion, the silver champion, the Cinco de Mayo champion, the franchise champion, the championship champion emeritus, the champion. Dude, with all of these champions, if you had all of these champions, nobody can really be the champion, right? Because there's just too many of them. But why do they create so many? Because when the fights are on television, the networks, the promoters, they feel as if in order to sell this fight to fight fans, the fight fans have to believe that this fight, that they are fighting over something other than money, that they're fighting for this championship. But in reality, most of these times, they're not really fighting for the championship. They're fighting for a position to fight the guy that makes the most money, right? That's a lot of times what they're actually fighting for. But if we were in an environment where, instead of always trying to push the championships, that we were really looking forward to seeing the best fights, then there would be no question whatsoever and definitely not from my point of view, that Terence Crawford versus Shawn Porter should be a fight that is made right away. And there's another thing besides just the championship things. If I had my druthers, I would have guys fight more than one time, because you can get more than one outcome. I mean, take for example, and I don't really particularly like I don't really like the outcome, but it is what it is. Deontay Wilder beating Tyson Fury beating Deontay Wilder. That was a radically different outcome in the second fight from the first fight, and you very well might get a radically different outcome from the third fight from the second fight. And when there were a lot of club shows and a lot of fights, a lot of fights in different cities and different areas that weren't necessarily televised, you had fewer belts, you would actually see a lot of guys fight each other multiple times with four belts, or for no belts, in order to be getting ranked number 1, number 2, number 3, or whatever, to set up a fight with the championship. But you would get a lot more fights, and I think the fighters, as a result, got more skills, got more looks at a lot of different fighters. Fight fans got to see a lot of different styles of fights, and they obviously didn't mind watching the same two fighters fight multiple times, because if they didn't, then fight fans weren't willing to pay for it and go see the fights, they wouldn't have held the fights. So the thing with Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter, for me, has a lot less to do with the championship and trying to figure out who the best welterweight is, because right now I believe that gets settled between Errol Spence Jr. and Shawn Porter, Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford, because Errol Spence already beat Shawn Porter. I certainly hope he can have another rematch with him. That would be great, and an exciting fight as well. I wouldn't mind that at all. But while we don't have that fight, to get Terence Crawford and to see those guys match up, see a cat from Ohio fight a guy from Omaha, Nebraska, and let the fight be in Omaha, Nebraska. I think that would be absolutely terrific and fun to go. And I would take a trip to Omaha, Nebraska for that fight if they could actually make that fight over there. But we live in the time where boxing at the upper levels are Hollywood, and anything below the top level fights, don't get the respect that they deserve. Now, also, as far as like the practical aspect of this and the possibility of this fight popping off, Bob Arum already said that he believes that Shawn Porter is too expensive. One time he said, yeah, they would look into the fight, Next thing he says is, that the fight is too expensive. So, really what I think is that there is a chance that Shawn Porter can beat Terence Crawford. I think Bob Arum knows that. Now, I do favor Terence Crawford in that fight, but I'm not confused, man. Shawn Porter is a real dog with a lot of championship experience, man. Win or lose, he's got a lot of championship experience, and he's coming in there knowing what he's going to try to do. And it's a fight I want to see. So let's hope that Team Porter gets their way. You let me know what you think in the comment section, and with that, I'm out. Peace.